today we will be discussing some shaylas and dina mominous, monetary aspects of the corona pandemic. And these are questions that are relevant to thousands, maybe tens of thousands of families. So according to government regulations and according to common sense and proper conscience, people are at home. So the ganim closed down, schools closed down, chugim closed down, and a common question that everyone is asking, so do gananot deserve to be paid? Metaplot, gananot, rabbis and chayderim in schools, teachers, do we need to pay them? And this is a very burning question. So I'll try to be clear and be brief in my opinion. Any employee that was hired to do a job and he cannot do the job for reasons that are not dependent on him, they have nothing to do with him, he gets no compensation. And the onus is to the detriment of the worker. Rashi explains, Mazle Goram. Probably it's his bad luck, it's his bad mazel. He was the one that was hired to do the job and he was the one to get paid. And if he can't do it for any reason, then it's his problem. It's not the problem of the employer, but of the employee. The Rosh offers a different interpretation, and the Rosh Perek Vav Siman Gimel Bava Metzia says, "Hamoitzi mechaveri olav harayim." Shvus Yankev Chuvas Chelek Aleph Kufayin Vav explains, according to the Rosh's opinion, how could we say it's the mazel of the worker? Maybe it's the mazel of the balabais, of the employer. After all, if he hired someone to do a job for him, he wants the job done, it's to his benefit. So the worker is losing out his wages, but the employer is losing out the job. So why do we say it's the mazel of the poel? Maybe it's the mazel of the balabais. So the Rosh maintains maybe. We don't know. And if we don't know, what's the din? Would there be a difference in halacha between the two approaches? Of course there would. So what happens if the balabais already paid the worker in full for his future job? So now the worker is muhzak. Does he have to give the money back to the employer? According to the Rosh, no, because we say hamoitzi mechaveri olav the other way around. But according to Rashi, if we assume that it's the mazel of the poyel, even though he got his money, he needs to give that money back. And that is actually a machlokes in Shin Lamed Gimel Sifei between the Mechaber and the Shach. The Mechaber says even though the worker got his money in advance, he does not need to give that money back. The Shach and Sifkot and Chafei maintains he does. So obviously the Shach would be based on the understanding of Rashi, while the Shulchan Aruch would be extremely reasonable based on the understanding of the Rosh. But this is only in any other oinus. Makas Medina has different halachas. So it's not something personal, subjective. It is something that hits the entire community. What Chazal define as Makas Medina, Makas Medina might have different rules. Where do we find that Makas Medina is unique? Two sugis in Bava Metzia, Kuf Gimel Amid Beis and Kuf Hey Amid Beis. Both these sugis deal with chachirut. What does chachirut mean? I probably don't have the right translations in English. But in days of yore, landowners, agricultural land, used to have three different formulas how to reap the harvest and take benefit of the land they own. One shitta was chiriya. You have workers working for you and you pay them on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, but they get paid without any direct correlation to what they produce. They get paid for their work. That's a schir yoim. Oris is a different formula, a different shitta. The oris works the fields, and he gives a certain percentage of the harvest to the balabata, to the balasoda. Chachirut is formula number 3, and that one against a different system. Hachocher reaps the entire harvest for himself, if it's abundant or meager, and he pays a certain amount of money to the balasoda, regardless of what he brings in from the field. So both Mishnayos deal with a chocher. So a person as if rented the fields from the owner, and he promised $10,000 a month. And then tragedy struck. There wasn't enough rain, it was a famine. The river dried up, and there was no way to supply water to the fields. So if most of the fields in the area were hurt, that's a Makas Medina. And by Makas Medina, the Chocher has the right to reduce the sum he is to pay to the field owner. Menachaloi michakuro. And that is only by Makas Medina. So Kuv Gimel deals with a situation in which the river dried up. Kuv Hey deals with a situation in which the locusts devoured most of the harvest, or nishtat for or there was a flood, and the flood destroyed the prados of the field. If it's a Makas Medina, menachaloi machakuro. So what's the din Makas Medina regarding the question of an employee, a worker? The Ramos Shin Chof Aleph Sif Aleph brings the opinion of Maram Rutenburg, quoted in the Mordechai Bava Metzia Shin Mem Gimel, and in other sources. Makas Medina, the worker, deserves to get full pay. And that's a chiddush. Because if it's any other einus, it's to the loss of the worker, to the benefit of the employer. Makas Medina is the other way around. The worker gets paid fully. That's the opinion of the Rama. The Sma Sif Kotnevov strongly disagrees, and he says, what's the logic? Why would there be a difference between Makas Medina and any other einus? You can't do the job. Why do I need to pay you? The Gaon goes beyond the argument of the Sma. The Gaon says, it's mamish the opposite. Because the very source of Makas Medina is when a person rented a field from the owner of that field. If it's a Makas Medina, he reduces the pay that he promised. So the field owner is the equivalent, according to the Gun, to the Biragros, If Koden Zayin, the field owner is equivalent to the worker. He is the one that expects to get paid. So just like the person that rented his field is the Mubzak, and therefore he does not have to pay, why does the employer need to pay the poyel? So the Gaon argues that this very psak is a contradiction to the very source in the Mishnah and the Gemara of Makas Medina. So the Gaon and the Sma reject the Rama. The Taz supports the Rama. What would the explanation be? Why would Makas Medina be to the benefit of the worker? There are two possible explanations. The Taz, on the spot in Shila Madad, argues, Makas Medina is the bad luck of the employer. Why would that be? Why would that be? I think one simple explanation, and I'll try to say it as clearly as I can. Makas Medina hits the entire tzibur, hurts everyone. And therefore, we always go to the very source. The very source. So when it's a question, is it the balasoda or the chocher? We say it's the bad luck of the Baal Hasoda. the field is his. Yes, the person that took over that field and he invested his energies and he was the one that sowed and plowed and watered the fields and he was supposed to get a huge profit. But we go to the source. Who owns this field? It's his bad luck. The same regarding a Malamed. So the Ramon Shinuch HaPal deals with a Gzeres Moishel. The authorities decreed that you cannot learn Torah. And there are more paskins based on Malamed, but we still need to pay the teacher. We need to pay the Malamed. We need to pay the Rebbe. Why is that? Because the very source is the parents of those children, is their bad luck. So understanding of the Goin, the Chocher, is Mughzak. The parents of the children are Mughzak. So if Makas Medina is to the benefit of the Chocher, should be to the benefit of the children's parents. I want to explain, no, it doesn't depend on the Mughzak. It depends on the source of this problem. So the parents are the equivalent to the Bala Soda, not the equivalent to Choker. Whom does this field belong to? He is the one that's being hurt from above, Min HaShamayim. The parents of the children, they are the ones to bear the brunt of this Gezerah, of this pandemic. That is the logic of Maram Rutenburg, Maram Padova, and the Ram. Another way to explain and to be doiche the cash of the Sman de Gra is we always prefer the worker to the employer. Yes, the Torah is quite socialistic. And the Torah always stands on the side of the worker. B'yoymai titin schoroi is a very unique halacha. You need to pay a worker the day he finished the job. And if you pay him 1 day later, you have two averes. Asay velo ta'aseh. We do not find a similar halacha by Mekach or Memcha. You bought something in a shop and you didn't pay the same day. You should pay the same day, but it's not allowed. It's not a bitul mitzvah to say. A loan, you took a loan. Priyas balchoy mitzvah. You need to pay on time, but it's not so chomer. It's not an esa v'lois esa. Only oved ma'avid. Only a worker. Yes, the Torah is socialistic. Torah stands up for workers. Another halacha that we do not find a parallel anywhere else. Person that works in the field, that is getting wages, he's getting fair pay. He could eat as much as he wants. The Balabaya says, you're getting paid. Why are you eating my stuff? That's Gzeira Sekosov. He's working the fields, he's entitled to eat as much as he wishes. That is a din which is unique. Only ben Balabayas lepoyel. He could regret, he could pull out whenever he wants to. So there are so many halachas in which we see Yad Poyel Alo Elyoino. So when there's any reason that a Poyel can do his job, he deserves to be paid. It is only when we could say Mazle Goram that he loses his compensation, his wages. And that's based on Rashi's approach, which I explained 15 minutes ago. So when it's a Makas Medina, and we can't put the blame on the Poyel more than on the employer, on the Balabayas, Yad Poyel Alo Elyoino. So I suggested two different explanations, but that's the opinion of the Ramah and the Taz. The Sman Bego and disagree. What do we do halacha l'maaseh? 190 years ago, there was a pandemic. Let's call it an epidemic. It wasn't global like COVID-19, but there was an epidemic. And previous shiurim, I discussed various different points that we learned from Rabbi Kiva, and there's some sefer of those days. But there's some sefer, one of his drashas deals exactly with our question. And he says, because this is a huge machlokes between the Ramah and the Sma, we need to make a pshara. And they should be paid 50%. So that's the achra of the Chassam Sofer. In Choshen Mishpat, we usually have a concept which is called kimli. Those that learn Choshen Mishpat are familiar with this concept. So the most fundamental halacha in Mominus is Amoitzi Mechaveri Olav Arayim. In modern language, in Hebrew, it is defined as Haschut lehenot men hasafek, the benefit of doubt. Chazal defined this halacha Amoitzi Mechaveri Olav Arayim. But in Dina Mominus, it goes beyond that. And the Muchzik could say Kimli Kishita Saramo, Kimli Kishita Saramban. And even if it's a minority opinion, the Muchzik could say, I want to rely on this opinion. So why would the Chassam Sofer say we need to make a pshara? And why wouldn't he say, Hamaitza Mechaveri Olav Arayim? Kimli. So if the worker was paid in advance, he should be able to say Kimli Kishita Saramo, that the worker deserves to get full pay. If the Balabais didn't pay the worker 1 penny, why can't he say Amurzak Kimli Kishita Sasma Vagra? I don't want to pay him anything. He deserves nothing. But the Chassam Sofer Paskin in his day, we need to make a pshara. I think that Kimli is not a good approach when we're dealing with a question which is tziburi, which involves, it's not something coincidental between Mr. A and Mr. B, between Pliny and Almoni, between Reuven and Shimon. It's nogea the entire tzibur. I think Kimli would be somewhat of a chilul Hashem, and it wouldn't make sense. So all those tzaddikim and good people that paid in advance, it would be to their detriment and to their loss. And the stingy ones that did not pay, they will be benefited. And they will say, we didn't pay, we're muhsak, we're not going to pay anything. I think that is why the Chassam Sofer said, when it's an epidemic, and this question is nogea for everyone, for hundreds of workers, Kimli is not the right approach. And we should say, b'derech pshara, they should get 50%. So in a previous year, I said I gave a psak, and I want to retract that psak. Might be somewhat of an embarrassment, but many times I say, a rav that cannot say I made a mistake is not allowed to be a rav to begin with. A rav that cannot say I don't know should not be a rav. In the Yerushalmi, in a few different sources, we find Odom Godol she'enoi boish loimer eini yodeya. Who is an Odom Godol? The one that is not embarrassed to say, I don't know. So many shaylas that I am asked, they say, I don't know. I need to check it. I need to look it up. I need to learn the sugi. Rava was one of the greatest Tamiroim. Halacha kamoisai b'kol makom. And many sources in Shas, first time in Brochas Lamed Zayin Amid Beis, last time in Nidus Samach Esam Adanav, and many sources in between, Shabbos Samach Gimel, Bava Basa Kuf Chav Zayin, and many other sources. Rav is the one that from time to time said, Devarim shemarti lochem ta'us ayu biyodi. What I said yesterday was a mistake, and I want to fix that. So I want to slightly reverse the psak I gave just a short while ago. What was that psak, and what do I think now? So the Chassam Sofer says we need to make a pshara. That means that all those workers will get 50% of their wages. And I said, no, we just need to give them 25% and not 50%. Why 25? Because of the concept of poyel bottle. In Shin Lamed Gimel, there's a sif in Shulchan Aruch, and it is based on various sugyas in Shas. When a worker can't do his job, he's an oinus. He is not to blame. He just can't do his job. We need to pay him, but only as a poil bottle. What does that mean? After all, he's not working. He's sitting at home. He's spending prime time with his family. So he does not deserve to get full compensation. We assume that people prefer to having vacation time to spend time with their family than working hard. And people would be willing to forego some of the pay to sit at home and be at home with their families. And that's the concept of poil bottle. So how much do we take off from a person's wages if he's a poil bottle, if he's sitting at home? To resolve Shinam and Gimel says 50%. 50% to me would seem a lot. I think most people would be willing to have a modest reduction, a modest cut in their wages to have the privilege and the pleasure of being at home. 10%, 15%. Very few people will be willing to go down to 50% not to work. People want to work. And the reason they want to work is they need to provide for their families. But that's the Taz, and the Taz quotes Rashi and some very important and significant early sources. I still think that Taz is a big chiddush, and there are many sources that seem to prove differently. Most important, Shuvas Arash B'Cherek Aleph Siman Tov Tov Kuf Pei Zayin. The Rashba writes that the poil bottle is a poichsin like tzas mischoroi. We take a little off his pay. Tzas is definitely not 50%. The same we learn in Shuvas Aramah. Shuvas Aramah Simanun. The Ramah says it doesn't really make much of a difference whether he's working or not working, whether he's home or not. It doesn't make much of a difference. It's a very minor difference. So the Ramah Simanun coincides with the Shuvas Arash Tov Tov Kuf Pei Zayin. My personal feeling would be it depends. It depends what your job is. So some jobs are very, very tough, especially manual labor. So being a builder in Israel in the summer, in intense heat and scorching sun, standing on the rooftops, on the scaffolds, I think many people would prefer to sit at home even with a serious reduction of their pay. But some people enjoy their jobs. So an artist goes to the studio and he loves what he's doing. I love what I'm doing. Many times I tell young Talmidim when I want to encourage them to learn and to try, ultimately to grow to be Marbitzei Torah, I say, who is a lucky person? The one that's getting paid for things he would do anyway. If I would win a lottery ticket and I would get $100 million, I don't think my lifestyle would change at all. I think I'll just keep on doing what I am doing. I love giving shiurim. I love teaching. I love learning. I love writing. Would anything change if I would be very rich? I don't think so. So that's a halacha. By Talmidei Chachamim, Malamdei Torah, there is no din of poil bottle because they would not prefer sitting at home. So, in my opinion, the concept of poil bottle would depend. What's your job? What are you doing? Do you enjoy your job or not? And we find two important sources that poil bottle is lav b'choda machta machtin. It's individual. Shuvas Arashba Miyuchosos Rambam Siman Ayin. But it's much more clear and explicit in Shuvas Aradbaz Chelik Beis Tov Shin Tzadi Gimel. The Radbaz says it depends. If he's young and strong and he does a great job, then poil bottle should be a very small sum. If he's an elderly person and it's hard for him to work, but he must do it because he needs to provide, then poil bottle would be a bigger sum. So saying 50% is poil bottle doesn't seem to be very reasonable. But on the other hand, im kain notato dvorecho l'shiyurim. So do we have any yardstick, any key to determine what's a poil bottle? We can't leave this up to every basin to decide on his own. There must be some formula. And we do not find any other fixed formula besides the towns. So would we say Poel Bottle takes off 50%? I don't think so, for two reasons. And this is where I retract and regret what I said a week ago. One reason is, the din of Poel Bottle is not Exeus HaKosav, it's not a Hilchas Abalei Tam. It's based on logic, and it's based on experience, on Metzius HaChaim. People enjoy being at home. Most people do not enjoy working hard. So we assume that most people will be willing to take a certain cut in their income to have the pleasure of doing whatever they enjoy to do. Resting, being at home, going for a tiyul, spending time with your family. But if we take 50% off their wages because of the pshara, I don't think people will be willing to go down below 50% for sitting at home. I'm already paying the price of sitting at home. I've lost 50% because of the machlokes between the Ramah and the Sma. So do you want to take more than 50% away because I'm at home? I'm already paying a very steep price for sitting at home. So you can't put Poel Bottle on top of the pshara. It's either this or that. And therefore, I do not think it's reasonable to say you're losing 50% of the pshara and another 50% because you're a Poel Bottle. That's argument number one. Argument number two. I think the concept of Poel Bottle is reasonable and logical for a short period of time. Yes, people usually have a vacation once a year, twice a year. So if you offer a vacation 3 times a year, take another week off, and you're going to have a certain reduction in your wages, reasonable. But no one would like to sit at home 3-4 months and having a very severe cut in his income. After all, people work because they want to provide for their families. So Poel Bottle is reasonable for dealing with a week, with a certain job that a person lost. He couldn't do the job, and he's sitting at home. So we say, you're going to have a reduction in your income because you're a Poel Bottle. But this pandemic has been going on for weeks, and we still do not know how long it'll take. I don't think Poel Bottle is reasonable if we're dealing with 2 months or 3 months a year, and that is a very, very significant loss of income. And therefore, in our case, I think Poel Bottle should be minimum. And therefore, I think Gananot, Mitaplat, other workers besides teachers of Torah should be paid close to 50%. My suggestion would be 45% or so. Contrary to what I said previously, 25 to 30%, I now think they deserve to be paid approximately 45%. Close to the pshara of the Chassam Sofer, which is 50% because of the machlokes between the Ramah and the Taz. So some parts of the economy are opening up. And recently the government in Israel said, again, and it could take 3 children. I think next week it's going to be up to 10 or 15 children. Our situation is definitely a Makas Medina, like Shin Chofal of Gezeras HaMoishel. So would it make any difference now that the government said you could send your kids to Gan? No, I don't think so. I think we're still in the midst of this pandemic. So Baruch Hashem and Esasol, we seem to be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but it still might be a very long tunnel. Numbers are better than they were, but there are still hundreds of people amongst us that are ill, and they could easily infect others. So yes, in the entire world, governments are struggling with the economic fallout of this crisis. So the government in Israel as well said, slowly, we need to make progress in the economy. So many parents need to go to work, so they need to send the children to Gan. And the Gananot need to have parnasa. But that does not mean that the danger is over. No, very far from that. And therefore, my psak is those parents that prefer to keep their children at home, it still has a din of Makas Medina, and they do not need to pay more than the 45% of my psak. And the Genenet cannot say, the Gan is open, send your kids. You don't want to send your kids, you need to pay a full price. No. Those are the parents that aren't desperate. They could keep their kids at home, have the right to do so. I even would recommend it. People that ask me, now that the Gan is open, should I keep my kids? And I said, as long as you could keep your kids at home, do so. They're safer at home. If you don't need to go to work, stay at home. I think the Gemara in Bava Kama Daf Samach is still relevant. Danger is not over. We're still in the midst of this pandemic.